Welcome to this episode of our program Arab Affairs. As usual, we will be discussing important topics. Today we'll be speaking about a very important summit that took place in Russia, in St. Petersburg. The second Russian-Africa summit that started on Thursday in Petersburg, Russia, in the framework of strengthening strategic relations between Russia and the African countries and raising them to a new level, the second of its kind. The first was held in 2019, and that was in Sochi. The summit was attended by a number of African leaders, and definitely President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who attended the summit in his capacity also as the chairman or the president of the NEPAD bloc. Also, the South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, who is in his capacity as the African Union chairman, and this year, and a number of other African leaders, in which they have spoken loudly about the priorities for the Russian-African partnership in the summit, what the African countries need from Russia, how Russia can help the African continent mitigate the crisis that has been seen, particularly because of the Russian-Ukraine crisis and the halt of the supply chains around the world because of this war, and definitely the climate change and its reflection on the African continent, as well as many others. President Sisi, during this summit, has laid down the African vision towards what would be the priorities of the African continent. We'll be speaking about that in our episode today. Before we delve into our discussion, let me first have a quick look on the Arab news that took place during this week, and we'll come back for more discussion.
Upon the directives of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, Egypt sent humanitarian shipments carrying medical aid on 3 army planes, offered from the Arab League as a support to the Sudanese people. This came within the frame of Egypt's and the Arab League solidarity and support to the Sudanese people during the current crisis, stressing the depth of the ties that bond the Arab people. Egypt condemned on Thursday breaking into Al-Aqsa Mosque by Israeli government officials and hundreds of extremists. In a statement, the Foreign Ministry said that repeated storming of Al-Aqsa Mosque would not hit its legal and historic position as an Islamic worship site. Egypt called on Israel to immediately stop those provocative acts, as they might result in dangerous repercussions on regional stability and security. Israeli occupation forces have prevented Muslim worshippers from entering the mosque and broke into Qabbat as-Sakhra mosque. Israeli occupation forces shot and killed a Palestinian teenager when clashes erupted during an Israeli army raid in the occupied West Bank on Thursday. The Palestinian Health Ministry, which identified the person killed as a 14-year-old, said clashes had broken out after Israeli troops entered the Palestinian city of Qaliqiya. Violence in the West Bank has worsened over the past 15 months amid stepped-up Israeli raids and assaults by the Jewish settlers on Palestinian villages. Meanwhile, an extremist Israeli cabinet minister visited Al-Aqsa Mosque, drawing condemnation from Jordan and Palestinians who view such visits as provocative. A helicopter belonging to the US-led coalition fighting Daesh terrorist group in Iraq crashed on Thursday. A security official in Iraq's northern autonomous Kurdistan region said the helicopter had crashed due to a technical problem near Al-Juwair, a town about 40 kilometers west of Kurdish capital Erbil. The US-led coalition helped defeat Daesh after it grabbed swath of Iraq and Syria, but its terrorists have continued to hide out in remote, mountainous areas, launching sporadic deadly attacks. Lebanon's cabinet on Thursday failed to meet to choose a successor to longtime central bank governor Riyad Salema, meaning the bank could be leaderless from Monday. Salema, at 72, leaves office on Monday after 30 years as governor, with Lebanon's economy in tatters and facing charges of embezzling public funds, which he denies. Thursday's cabinet session was cancelled minutes after it was set to start because there were not enough ministers to meet the quorum. More than 900 migrants have drawn off Tunisia's coast so far this year as they tried to reach Europe by boat. In a warning of further tragedy, the United Nations said it was deeply concerned for the safety of hundreds of migrants stranded in Tunisia following their removal to remote parts of the country. The Tunisian Interior Ministry said 901 bodies had been recovered by July 20th following maritime accidents in the Mediterranean Sea. Tunisia has become a major gateway for irregular migrants and asylum seekers attempting the sea voyages in often rickety boats in the hopes of a better life in Europe.
Welcome back. And during the summit, we have seen lots of important sidelines meeting between the president and the African leaders from one side. President Sisi also with the Russian president at the very beginning and before even the summit starts. The summit has seen lots and lots of promises. The summit has seen lots and lots of discussions about the importance that Africa put for the sustainable development of the continent, and definitely the African leaders. On top of them, President Sisi have put the priorities of the African needs, or the African great importance it gives to such strategic relations with Russia. Before we delve into any discussion, let's first have a quick look on this report, and we'll come back for more discussion.
President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi urged Russia on Friday to revive the Black Sea grain deal, which collapsed last week, in which it had allowed Ukraine to export grain from its seaports despite the war. President Sisi told on Russia-African summit in St. Petersburg that it was essential to reach agreement on reviving the deal, which Russia quit because it said Ukraine and the West were failing to hold up their end of the bargain. The president said that along with his Russian counterpart, Egypt has launched the first edition of the summit in 2019, adding that this edition comes at a very crucial international circumstance characterized by a high degree of polarization. At the continent level, President Sisi referred to Egypt's role within its presidency of the Steering Committee of the Heads of State and Governments of the African Union Development Agency, the NEPAD, as well as leaders of the post-conflict reconstruction and development at the AU level to support efforts to reach peace and security. The head of state also said that Egypt has always been a pioneer in pursuing the path of peace based on the power of logic. El-Sisi urged formulating sustainable solutions to extending conflicts that must be based on principles of international law, stressing that African countries are sovereign and looking for sustainable development. The president stated that Egypt aspires for an appropriate solution regarding the export of food grains that takes into account the interests of all parties. He also called for reforming the system of international economic institutions with the contribution of the Russian role. Earlier, President Sisi held summit talks with Russian President in St. Petersburg. The talks focused on boosting the distinguished bilateral ties binding the two countries over the last 80 years. The two leaders also reviewed the number of regional and international issues of common concern. President Sisi stressed the importance of the Africa-Russia summit, saying its second version will have great results.